What are the worst dating epic fails you've ever experienced? Story 1. I just told my husband this story recently while we were driving around the town we grew up in, reminiscing about our teen years. Back then, in the hustle and bustle of our small town, there was this guy who always seemed to be lingering across the street from the bus stop I frequented. I couldn't deny it. He had that certain magnetic appeal, a kind of charm that left me curious. But as fate would have it, our paths didn't cross until a few years later at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue. To my delight, he was there, as cool as ever, and he remembered me from those bus encounters. Surprise, surprise, turns out he'd been quietly crushing on me from afar all those years. The connection between us was undeniable, sparking a desire for a more private conversation that hinted at potential intimacy, but there was a twist in the table. He was thoroughly and unmistakably drunk. Amidst the laughter and the night air, we engaged in a lively conversation, perched side by side on the front steps. The chemistry between us grew stronger with every word, our faces tantalizingly close to that eagerly anticipated kiss. Yet, just as our lips were about to meet in a passionate embrace, the unexpected occurred. In a surreal twist, he suddenly pivoted and, like a malfunctioning fire hose, unleashed a spectacular stream of spew. I did my best to offer some comfort before returning to the party, eventually deciding to make my exit. Nevertheless, he felt remorseful and later asked me out, to which I hesitantly agreed. I believed in second chances. After all, everyone has their moments of overindulgence, right? However, his idea of a date shattered any romantic notions I had. He took me to a graveyard in broad daylight to get drunk, and I quickly realized it was far from the brightest bulb in the box. Needless to say, that cringeworthy date marked the end of our brief young love, and we never spoke again. Story 2. On 2 separate occasions, I've gone home with a guy after a perfectly lovely first date, only to find an array of toys laid out in the bed, all ready for action. Don't get me wrong, I'm generally open-minded, but you can't just spring that on someone, guys. There has to be a discussion before you break out those kinds of toys. It's like a delayed, unsolicited request for something romantic. Hey, this is my place and there's my bed, and oh, whoops, look how tempting it is. In both cases, there was no second date. Whoa, that escalated quickly. What part of a dude's brain thinks that if he's fortunate enough to bring a girl back to his place, he should immediately go all out into uncharted territory? Guess some people are just in a rush to unwrap all their toys, but slow and steady can be way more enjoyable. Story 3. There's this girl I'd been dating for a few weeks. Out of the blue, she invited me to a funeral for some guy I didn't even know. I thought, okay, this is a bit strange, but maybe it's a close friend or something. But surprise, it actually turned out that the funeral was for her fiancé. I bolted once I realized why everyone was giving me those death stares. And seriously, looking back, I should have been the one giving that girl the stink eye. Who in their right mind brings a date to their fiancé's funeral? Now here's a similar story that happened to a friend of mine with a pretty dark sense of humor who recently lost his wife. At the funeral, everyone was walking on eggshells, not sure what to say. And right after the service, one of my friend's buddies asked, "Is there anything you need?" And my friend casually replied, "I just need my wife." Now the whole crowd goes silent, jaws dropping. But then that friend of his adds, "Can do, as long as she's 19 and Russian." It was so shockingly inappropriate that everyone burst out laughing. Turns out that was just the kind of twisted humor he needed to get through it. Story 4. There was this one girl I was seeing a few years back. We went to a party and she was so glued to her phone that she didn't even notice when I had moved and started chatting with some other guests. Maybe she had a better conversation going on the other end of her phone. Then there's this other girl I dated, and she asked if she could bring a friend along for some extra safety. Totally understandable, and I was cool with it. Turns out she brought her best friend who also brought along her date. The 2 girls pretty much ghosted us, their dates, for the entire evening. Good thing the other girl's date turned out to be a pretty cool dude. He invited me to join in the weekend football, and that's where things got interesting. I've been playing weekend football with him and his crew for a whole year now. So the date might have been dull, but the guy still made it a win by meeting a new friend. Story 5. This guy asked me out on a date at a Japanese restaurant I really enjoy. We got there, and after I placed my order, the server turned to him and asked for his order. You won't believe it. He said he wasn't hungry. I was like, "Okay, are you sure you don't want to eat later?" But he replied, "Nah, I just want to eat what you eat." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but his expression made it clear he wasn't kidding. The awkwardness continued as I savored the tasty sushi. He didn't eat throughout the date and just watched me from across the table. When it came time to pay, guess what? He didn't even offer. So I ended up paying for my food. If he had picked up the tab, I would have felt guilty instead of just being weirded out. No second date with that guy. But hey, my relationship with that Japanese restaurant is still going strong.
Want a break from the ads? Want a break from the ads?
Well, it's your lucky day, because this video is not sponsored by Rufus Read It. Trust me, I get it. This is probably you trying to click on one of my videos in public. That is why I created Rufus Read It, a 100% clean channel where you can enjoy my content in peace without worrying about what your search history will look like after. Oh, and did I mention that there's basically never any dolphin noises? So if you want to switch it up and listen to some lighter content, then click the link in the description and check out the channel. And if not, back to the stories. Story 6. Here's a dating red flag story I've experienced. There's this guy I've dated who wouldn't shut up about how much he despised promiscuity, but later that night he decides to make a move, attempting to slip his hand up my shirt. I had to firmly halt his advances, saying, "Hold on a second. Weren't you just lecturing about your aversion to promiscuity? I mean, what was that?" It was like his earlier pronouncements were his pretty ironic secret code for, "I can't stand girls who won't hop into bed with me." I'm not sure how that one went, but seriously, folks, don't get involved with people who can't walk the talk. That's a major red flag. Story 7. I once went on a Tinder date with this girl whose bio had a line like, "You won't like me, I'm a disaster." Well, spoiler alert, she was spot on. But she was pretty attractive, so I decided to meet her for tea at this local hipster joint. It was clear to me right away that she was going through a tough time. She opened up about having this hyper-competent alter ego she occasionally slipped into, and her current life goal was something like moving several states away from her family to work at a gas station, despite being a senior bio major. As our date was winding down, things got even more bizarre. She suddenly realized she left her backpack in her last class and she didn't have a car to go back and get it. Apparently, her mom had dropped her off and gone home, which was half an hour away in the suburbs, so being the nice guy, I offered to take her back to retrieve her backpack. But then she made another request. She needed to ride to her house because it was late and there were no buses running to her place. That meant a half-hour drive back to her parents' house in the suburbs. During the ride, she casually mentioned that she actually had a boyfriend but liked to see what's out there occasionally, and apparently, that's what our date was about. In making things even worse, she also claimed she was pretty sure she was a lesbian, but enjoyed the power of getting a guy to like her. At that point, I was just waiting to hear what insane thing she would say next. After that, we never saw each other again. Oh, the sheer audacity of some people to drop the oddest tidbits on a date. It's practically a talent. Perhaps that girl was simply reveling in the glory of her bio, saying, "You won't like me, I'm a disaster," and then proving it beyond doubt. It's almost like she's daring people to take a wild ride in her roller coaster of chaos. Well, I think the guy's still lucky he's not the boyfriend, because, life could be so much worse. Story 8. I have this experience dating the beehive girl. She sported a Marge Simpson hairdo, and I'm talking about a towering 18 inches high. Beehive girl was an actor, and she just couldn't wrap her head around why roles would demand she cut her hair, so she inadvertently turned them down. I endured 3 dates with her just to soak in her incredible stories. The catch? She was completely oblivious to the fact that she was the problem. It felt like I was in the middle of a real-life soap opera, but she was dead serious about it. Whoa. This guy just had a front row seat to an outrageous real-life drama. Story 9. Back in my junior college days, there was this girl who invited me over for a study date. Her dad was home and we actually sat down at the kitchen table to study. Surprisingly, her dad seemed pretty cool from the little conversation we had. It sounded innocent enough, right? Aside from a quick 7-Eleven run for snacks and cigarettes, her dad was just about 10 feet away from us the whole time. I thought the date went well. We ended up talking more than studying and even made tentative plans to catch a movie together. A couple of days later, I texted her to figure out our weekend plans, for the movie and dinner. Her reply left me baffled. She said our relationship was not going to work because she wanted someone more aggressive. That revelation blew my mind, like, what? Apparently her running to her bedroom a few times during our study session was supposed to be a hint for me to follow her and, make a move, I guess. We had pens and paper right there. She could have scribbled a note or something. I'm still not sure how I was supposed to understand that I forgot my other notebook was code for follow me to the bedroom. Story 10. I was dating this guy for about a month. I had a feeling he was still carrying some baggage from his previous relationship, but hey, we all have our pasts, right? We decided to meet up for some beers in the patio of a nearby tap house, enjoying the sunny day and hoping for a good time, but then out of the blue his phone rings. He answers it, and to my surprise, it's his ex on the other end. They dive headfirst into this intense argument, airing their dirty laundry and rehashing the breakup, all while he's sitting right across from me at the table. Awkward doesn't even begin to cover it. About an hour and a few more beers later, fate intervened in the form of a guy at the table next to ours. He shot me a knowing nod and invited me to join their table. I figured, why not? As we got to chatting, it became apparent that we shared a common perspective. The guy I was originally with was being a grade A jerk. My new friend and I spent the next couple of hours bonding over our disdain for Mr. Phone Call Drama King, and wouldn't you know it, after the dust settled, the jerk finally decided to make his exit. Good riddance, right? As it turns out, my newfound friend and I hit it off remarkably well. We ended up dating for a whole year, and the best part is, we're still friends to this day. Who knew something bad could result in another nice thing? Every cloud, indeed, has a silver lining. Do you want a dose of this girl's luck to come your way? Then go hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. You never know what good fortune might be waiting for you at the end. Now let's sit back and enjoy the rest of the show. Story 11. I've been in and out of the dating app scene for a couple of years now. Recently, I landed my first big boy job and moved to a new area. That's when I matched with this cute girl who happened to be a junior in college nearby. Our first date was quite nice. We grabbed coffee and took a leisurely stroll. We even made plans to meet up for lunch that weekend. During our lunch date, we spontaneously decided to go on a hike. It drove us to my place to grab some water and snacks and change into suitable hiking gear. The hike went smoothly, and everything seemed to be going pretty darn well. We kept texting and staying in touch throughout the week. However, things took a bizarre turn that Friday. I was hanging out at a friend's place and had a few drinks, making it unsafe for me to drive back home. To top it off, my phone was running out of juice, so I sent a courtesy text to her letting her know I'd be out of commission for a while. The next morning, I returned home and plugged in my phone. Within seconds, a barrage of about 50 text messages flooded in, all from her. It was like a spiral into insanity. At first, she told me to have a good time and enjoy my night, but then it escalated from there. "Are you free?" turned into, "Why aren't you talking to me?" And towards the end of this texting marathon, she mentioned driving by my house and not seeing my car. She even accused me of sleeping around. It was like every insecurity imaginable got projected onto me in just a few hours, all while I was asleep. I decided to call it off immediately. It seemed like she had some deeper issues to deal with, and I genuinely hope she's gotten the help she needs and is leading a happy life. It was just the sudden transition from a few enjoyable dates to that fateful night that made me take a step back and say, what on earth just happened? Story 12. I fell victim to a classic catfishing experience, and this tale goes back about 10 years. I had been engaged in these lengthy online chats with someone named Ashley. After a few days of virtual banter, we decided it was high time we met in person. I showed up at the bar, all brimming with excitement, and gracefully took my seat. But then out of nowhere, this guy approaches, introduces himself as Ashley, and takes a seat beside me. I glanced at the photo we had exchanged, which I had confidently assumed featured Ashley and her ex-boyfriend. To my bewilderment, the person sitting across from me turned out to be Ashley, the guy from that very photo. I couldn't believe it. I genuinely thought Ashley was the girl in the picture. So there I was, a straight man showing up for a date with a man. Somehow I managed to maintain my composure and politely explain to this guy that he was playing a deceitful game. I expressed my disbelief, explaining that his actions were not only misleading, but also a surefire way to land himself in hot water. But he even had the guts to say, "It's okay, we can go after girls together. If we strike out, we can still have a good time." That's when I told him to go take a long walk off a short pier and made a swift exit. Story 13. So my boyfriend was around 20 or 21 at the time. One night, we decided to go out to this fine dining restaurant with his parents, thinking it would be a nice evening. But here's where it gets messed up. Right in the middle of our fancy dinner, he loudly blurts out, "Oh, by the way, since you won't sleep with me, I'm going to bed with other girls." And I'm just sitting there frozen because he said that with his parents inches away. Needless to say, the dinner went from fancy to incredibly awkward in a matter of seconds. I nearly had a piece of steak coming out of my nose with that one. Seriously, what a terrible time to expose a shocker. But on the bright side, at least the girl found out early on what kind of unique guy her boyfriend was. Not even fazed in front of his parents. Definitely had a red flag waving there. Story 14. So one time I went on this date where I swear I could have only said 5 words. I can't remember if it was just, "Hello, my name is Fred." The girl just chatted away for over an hour and a half, never even pausing to include me in the conversation. She went on reminiscing, complaining, and straight up bragging about her life for a full 90 minutes straight. I was so taken aback that I just kind of drove home wondering if that experience was some sort of surreal dream. And you know what? It brought to mind one of my current girlfriend's friends. She was eager to meet me and we had this dinner, but I swear it felt more like a solo monologue performance. Not a single question was tossed my way. It was all about her, her mother, and even a bizarre tangent about how she, a white woman, felt like she was entering a Wakanda war zone where she tried to watch Black Panther in her home state of North Carolina. Talk about one-sided conversations. Going on a date like that feels like you've accidentally walked into a play with an incredibly lengthy and tedious monologue. Well, at least such dates provide you with a chance to get to know the other person better, right? Or perhaps it will just leave you battling boredom. Story 15. This one led to a date with my girlfriend, who actually ended up becoming my wife. Now, this little adventure happened just 20 minutes before our very first date. I was running a bar and my girl was a bartender. Yes, it's a bit cheesy, but you can't ignore a hot Swede who has just started working for you, right? Now, our bar was located in a dodgy part of town, right next to a barbershop that everyone knew was a front for a local snow dealer. We had all kinds of problems with this guy parking his car right outside our doors. On the day of our date, we had just installed some big steel bollards to block our doors, and had been working that day, so I was completely unaware of the trouble those bollards had caused. As the evening approached, I casually strolled to the bar to meet this cute girl for our date. Our neighbor, however, very politely asked me for a quick word, which immediately set off some alarm bells. I walked in, expecting to lose another bottle of rum to compensate for some vague inconvenience. That's when he locked the doors, and I started to get a bit worried. Now, I can't quite remember, or at the time understand exactly what he said, but the general gist of it was, "You mess with my parking, I mess with you." He then pulled out either a machete or at least his angry little brother and proceeded to chase me around the barbershop. So just 2 minutes before our date was due to begin, my future wife saw me fling myself, as if caught in an 80s action movie explosion, over the wall. I had busted through my neighbor's back door, landed on my head, picked myself up, dusted myself off, strolled nonchalantly through the doors, and collapsed in the bar. I can only imagine how thrilled that girl must have been. Seeing her guy fending for himself like some cool hero in a movie, it would have been a bit more epic if he hadn't passed out in the end. Story 16. About 7 years ago, I messaged this girl on POF, and we seemed to hit it off. She was decent looking, and we agreed to meet up for a date. She gave me the address, which turned out to be in the middle of a rather rundown trailer park across town. Alarm bells started ringing in my head, but youthful desires got the best of me, so I decided to give it a shot. As night fell, I found myself in a trailer park where only about 10% of the places had visible addresses. I got hopelessly lost, and as I circled the roads, I felt the eyes of some rather sketchy-looking folks who seemed like they might reach for the shotguns at any moment. Feeling a bit lost myself, I decided to call her for directions. The moment she picked up, I realized there was a problem. Her speech impediment was the worst I'd ever heard, and her conversation consisted of a series of, "What? Sorry, and huh?" As I continued driving, I spotted a girl on the side of the road in rolled-down sweatpants, also on the phone. That sinking feeling crept over me when I realized it was her. We ended up at Texas Roadhouse, but it turned out you needed a reservation at the time of day, and the place was packed. Trying to make the best of a tricky situation, I decided we'd head to Buffalo Wild Wings across the parking lot. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. If you've never been, BWW is a deafeningly loud sports bar. I couldn't understand much of what she was saying, but I did notice that her teeth looked rather discolored and mottled. I focused on my food, attempting to chew slowly to catch more of her words. After we finished eating, I drove her back to the trailer park. I had bought her spice drops because she had mentioned in her emails that she'd never tried them before. I insisted she munch on them during the drive, partially because it spared me from trying to decipher her speech. When we pulled to her place, I had my foot in the brake, ready for a quick exit. I said my goodbyes, internally screaming, "Just leave, will you?" But then the unexpected happened. She asked me inside for a conjugal visit and suggested we spend some time alone together. I politely declined, but as she was getting out of the car, she leaned back in and initiated a kiss that I couldn't escape. I tried to keep my composure, all the while imagining the state of her teeth. It was an awkward few seconds, and I eventually managed to choke out a hasty goodbye before making my escape. The taste of hot wings and spice drops lingered in my mouth for the entire drive back home, and it was really far from pleasant. Story 17. I've had my fair share of interesting dating experiences. I'm starting to wonder if I have a magnet for the weird ones. First up, there was the time when a girl showed up to our date pregnant. And I mean, about to pop any moment. I swear, the fetus attempted to shake my hand. What baffled me was that during all our pre-date conversations, she never mentioned that she was expecting. So I immediately got up and left. Then there was the smoking hot redhead who joined me for a date but spent the entire time glued to her phone. We barely exchanged 2 sentences. I figured she must have been disappointed in my looks, my behavior, or something else, so I chalked it up as a loss and left. But on the next day, she texted me asking when we could meet again. I declined by simply saying no. Next, there was the girl who arrived at our date looking like she was in some sort of downer. Who knows? She actually nodded off at our table. Last but not least, during one fine evening, a girl got absolutely hammered on her second date. She decided to start an argument with me, threw her drink right in my face, called me the N-word, I'm white, and then demanded I drive her home. When I suggested she takes an Uber, she claimed she didn't have enough money for one. Guess who ended up footing the bill for her Uber ride? Yep, yours truly. This guy sure has a knack for attracting weird girls. To help you steer clear of any trouble similar to what he encountered, I've made up a few tips. First, be cautious of those who are only in it for free food. Second, if you can't quite match the weirdness, try not to draw the attention of the eccentric ones. Third, if you encounter someone who gets all heated, throws drinks, and slings insults, well, my advice is simple. Make a graceful exit with a grin. They need to handle their own problems. And if they can't, that's still their issue to deal with. And finally, if you've stuck with us this far and looking to improve your chances of a long-lasting relationship, check out When Did You Know You Were Going to Marry Your Wife? Story 7 is touching. See you there.